Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Erin Viner.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom.
In our top story, the euphoria surrounding the release of the first 3 Israeli hostages held by Hamas terrorists for 470 days has subsided. Now, 24-year-old Romy Gonen, 31-year-old Doron Steinbrecher, and 28-year-old Emily Damari have begun the long road to recovery. After being welcomed by their families, the 3 young women were transferred to the returnees wing at the Sheba Medical Center near Tel Aviv. Psychologist Dr. Einat Yeheneh is leading the rehabilitation team. She says the hostages suffered a reality of extreme violence, constant fear, dire conditions, nutritional deprivation, and threats. Her role is to help restore the freed captive's sense of control. Each one will receive a tailored treatment plan. Dr. Yeheneh will also help the families of the hostages cope with the complex needs of their loved ones who will likely endure nightmares, moments of alienation, or other unexpected behaviors for a long time to come.
During his inaugural address, U.S. President Donald Trump highlighted the release of the first 3 Israeli hostages and the beginning of a ceasefire in Gaza as the theme of his second presidency, world peace. Trump said his proudest legacy will be that of peacemaker and unifier. He described the hostage deal as a first step toward lasting peace in the Middle East. Rabbi Ari Berman, president of Yeshiva University, gave a benediction at the inaugural event. He emphasized that Trump acutely feels the pain of the families of the Israeli and American hostages held by Hamas. While everyone welcomes the hostages being freed, there are many who remain skeptical regarding the ceasefire deal. Famed attorney Alan Dershowitz said it is not a deal, it is an extortion, a crime. This will be bad for Israel's security, but good for the hostages that remain alive and their families. Dershowitz also denounced Hamas supporters on university campuses who chant for intifada and revolution. He said they have blood on their hands.
Among the very first executive orders signed by President Trump was one that bars giving foreign aid that does not serve America's interests. The corrupt UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, falls into that category and will likely see an end to U.S. funding. Teaching materials in UNRWA-run schools have glorified terrorism, encouraged so-called Islamist martyrdom, demonized Israelis, and incited anti-Semitism. UNRWA employees actively participated in the October 7th massacre and were also involved in the abduction and holding of hostages in Gaza. Trump halted aid to UNRWA in 2018 during his first term in office, but that funding was restored under the Biden administration.
Last week, we reported that for the first time in 18 years, a majority of Jewish Israelis are opposed to a Palestinian state under any circumstances. And it now appears that under the new administration of U.S. President Donald Trump, it likely will not happen. Mike Huckabee is Trump's choice for U.S. ambassador to Israel. The former Arkansas governor dismissed the possibility of pursuing a 2-state solution in an interview with Ami magazine. He suggested that Trump will focus on prioritizing Israel's sovereignty rather than diplomatic compromises, such as the 2-state framework.
2 U.S. officials told the Times of Israel that the Biden administration failed to properly vet some residents of Judea and Samaria that it sanctioned last year. 2 Israelis who also hold American citizenship, named Issachar Mann and Levi Palant, were misidentified by the U.S. Treasury Department as foreign persons who were alleged to have committed violent acts against Palestinians. Mann and Palant sued the U.S. government, arguing that the sanctions violate their constitutional rights to due process and equal protection, and insist that they should not have been targeted because of their U.S. citizenship. Former President Joe Biden signed an executive order sanctioning 17 individuals and 16 entities. Meanwhile, just hours after being sworn in as the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump issued his own executive order that canceled those punitive measures imposed by his predecessor on these and other Jewish residents living in Israel's heartland.
The inauguration of President Trump was not the only event in Washington, D.C. On Tuesday, the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus hosted an important reception on Capitol Hill to celebrate its relaunch. Distinguished officials from both sides of the aisle were in attendance, as well as Jewish and Christian leaders and several VIP guests from around the world. Democratic Representative Brad Snyder of Illinois and Republican Congressman Ronnie Jackson of Texas co-chaired the CIAC. Snyder said strengthening the unbreakable bond between the United States and Israel and supporting Israel's security has always been a priority for him. Jackson vowed to work to ensure that America stands with Israel as the Jewish state fights for its right to exist. Josh Reinstein, president of the Israel Allies Foundation, stressed that the relaunch of the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus comes at a crucial time for U.S.-Israel relations, with fresh leadership under President Trump and the new opportunities ahead.
On Monday, the world will mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This year coincides with the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest of the Nazi concentration camps. The death toll among Europe's once vibrant, centuries-old Jewish communities was at least 6 million souls. The Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial and Museum in Jerusalem will hold special tours, lectures, and a variety of other programs throughout the day. Sadly, 8 decades later, it appears that the lessons of the Holocaust have been forgotten, witnessed by a significant rise in anti-Semitism in the wake of Israel's war against genocidal Hamas terrorists.
Israel will soon become home to a state-of-the-art artificial intelligence data center. American technology giant NVIDIA has started construction on a new AI research and engineering firm in the northern city of Yokneam. The $500 million, 10,000-square-meter facility will house one of the largest and most advanced data center laboratories in the Jewish state. The company will focus on advancing next-generation data technologies, including networking hardware, software, and AI applications. It will begin operations in the first half of this year. The Santa Clara, California-based corporation already has a large R&D presence in Israel with thousands of employees in 7 labs.
Israel must prepare for a direct confrontation with Turkey. This is according to a government committee report on the defense budget and security strategy. The forum is warning that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's ambition to restore Ottoman-era influence in the region could lead to further heightened tensions between Ankara and Jerusalem that might escalate into conflict. The conclusions also highlight the risk that Islamist factions in Syria may align with Turkey to create a new and dangerous threat to Israel's security that could even surpass the one posed by Iran. The committee is recommending an increase in Israel's defense budget by 15 billion shekels annually over the next 5 years. The findings have been presented to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who continues to stress that Israel must be prepared for the unexpected.
In archaeological news, researchers believe an ancient multi-room structure uncovered near Jerusalem's Old City was likely used for ritual worship nearly 3,000 years ago. The site is located in the city of David. The ruins feature 8 rock-hewn rooms containing an altar, an oil press, and a wine press. The Israel Antiquities Authority believes the site, that dates from the 8th century before the Common Era, was boarded up during a crackdown on worship outside the Temple Mount. It's the only known ritual structure from the time of the First Temple in Jerusalem. Excavation Director Eli Shukron told the Times of Israel the building was basically preserved in its original place. It was closed off, nobody knew about it, nobody touched it for so many years. It's believed the structure ceased to function as a ritual prayer facility following religious reforms implemented by King Hezekiah and King Josiah, who wanted to eliminate these sites and concentrate worship at the temple.
The on-again, off-again international airline service to Israel is back on again as regional tensions de-escalate. Major European carriers now say they will resume flights to Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv as early as next week. The group includes Air France, and later next month, Germany's Lufthansa, Swiss, Austrian, and Brussels Airlines, and Eurowings. Traffic is expected to accelerate in the spring as British Airways will come on board. The announcement is welcome news for Israel's tourism industry, although 3 major U.S. carriers have yet to resume normal operations to the Holy Land. Delta is only scheduled to return to Israeli skies in April, while United and American Airlines are so far continuing the suspension of flights until an indefinite time in the future.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. We're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Maayan Hoffman. She is the executive editor at ILTV. Maayan, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little about what is ILTV?
So ILTV is Israel Television, ILTV, and we are a 10-year-old Israeli television syndication program. We are mainly a daily news program, 30 minutes, all the headlines that you need within a given day coming here out of Israel. Of course, we have some other programs, but that's the bread and butter, and that's going out mostly across North America.
It's really interesting because ILTV is kind of like this new type of media, not the traditional media that you see on networks or TV stations, things like that, but it's video, it's daily, it's fresh, and it's something we're seeing a lot more in lieu of traditional media. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's what's so excited. I've been there actually only 8 months. I used to be at the Jerusalem Post for a number of years. And I made the shift because I really believe that this is the future of how people are going to digest media, how they're going to consume their news. We already saw the shift moving towards social media for quite some time. And what we do, and what I think is why we're getting over 1 million views a day with, again, just 30 minutes of only Israel content, is that we are on YouTube, which is where many people like to watch those shows. In fact, the YouTube algorithm have shifted toward really embracing 30-minute shows. In addition, we're on all the social media platforms. We syndicate to news stations. So rather than having the overhead of owning a channel, what we're actually doing is giving people our program and enabling them to get those headlines out to their audiences without having people like us on the ground.
Since the war began on October 7th, 2023, the news cycle changes so fast.
Yeah.
Every second there's something. I'm constantly looking at my phone to see what's the latest. How do you guys keep up with the demand?
Well, so what's interesting is this is actually the beauty of social media versus like or even, I mean, you could say a website as well, but versus an old school print newspaper, for example. So we have somebody that's managing the flow of news content throughout our social channels. That's X, that's Telegram, that's, Facebook, of course, and many of the others. And then we aggregate by the end of the day. We go into the studio, we pull the top, let's call it 8 to 12 most important headlines from the day. The cycle is always changing, but not everything is that big by the end of the day. And then we put those together and we broadcast a show. That's what we were able to do.
Yeah, it started off on October 7th that the news was just so gloomy and terrible. And then it got more optimistic. And then we started winning and we saw the miracles of God. And then Donald Trump win. A week after the Trump inauguration, are we expected to see some really good news coming up?
I mean, I believe so. And I don't think it's just a win of Donald Trump, though I think that Donald Trump, in and of itself, having known what he did for Israel and for regional security and for international or foreign policy in his first round in the White House, obviously we can expect or hope to expect very similar things. But I think that there's also something about the powerful aspect of the United States. People are looking for a powerful leader. He happens to be one. And so I don't know that, again, I wouldn't say, oh, it's Republican, it's Democrat, it's this, it's that, but he represents what we need right now in the world, which is somebody who's going to say, Hamas, you're going to have hell to pay if you don't give those hostages back. Oh, Iran, you better be careful. When I come in, remember what I did back then when you were starving and had no money from oil? It's going to happen again. So think about what it looks like to use those proxies. So I think from an Israel standpoint, given the multiple things, I mean, there was a list, you talk about it, of 9 things that Donald Trump did for us when he was in office, among many other smaller things. I mean, there were 9 big buckets. I think you're going to see many more of these that we couldn't have even have imagined as he takes office. And I think that for Israel's standpoint, we've been struggling, internally before this October 7th, certainly in the last months since the war. And now we have an opportunity to work closer again without any coldness with the United States and have new things come to fruition.
Another thing that we're looking at the news is that people have the sense that America and Israel are back together again. Best buddies, back together,
right.
holding hands. So the question is, what are the enemies of Israel thinking right now? Not just the ones that are enemies in terms of terrorist organization or Iran, but the UN, the ICC. Do you think that there's going to be a real change of heart there?
I wouldn't use the word change of heart because that would imply them changing, but I think there are going to be changes in how they are related to that is going to actually diminish some of their strength. I mean, we've seen the United Nations over the course of this war condemn Israel in such insane ways, if you want to. I mean, I hate to use that word, but there's no other word to describe the way that they have accused us not only of genocide, but of constantly, condemning Israel while not looking at the terrorist organizations. Trump has nominated Elise Stefanik. We know what she did with the 3 presidents of universities. I mean, these are prominent universities who, really they retired, they quit as a result of the trial on anti-Semitism on their own campuses. And this is the woman who will go to the United Nations and fight for the United States. Fighting for the United States is fighting for Israel. And I think the United Nations will lose a lot of its power, and certainly the ICC. It will be irrelevant, I think, in many ways.
There's been a lot of hints in the news that countries that stand with Israel are going to get better treatment by America, better treatment by Israel in Africa and Latin America. Do you think that's accurate, or do you think that's just wishful thinking?
I mean, I think it's wishful thinking in some sense, but it's not. But there might be a grain of truth to it, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I don't think Trump or anybody in his office is going to say, "Oh, you're nice to Israel, let's be nice to you." I mean, in some cases, certainly in the region, but not globally. But I do think that there is something about values and ethics that we all align with. And when somebody or some country recognizes the value of Israel's democracy as stability in the Middle East, they likely also align with American values and are a good ally for the United States.
Maayan, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Well, I think that the message that I would say is that the cup is half full. After so many months, more than a year of a very, very tragic and difficult war, we are on the cusp of seeing a change with the inauguration of Donald Trump, but also with the fall of Assad in Syria and, God willing, these rebels being able to get their act together, a ceasefire holding in Lebanon, please God, our hostages being home, and being able to see that Israel is going to come out strong in the end. We've not only begun to win this war, we have really won it. And I'd love to see what's going to happen in 2025.
Thank you, Maayan, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now, the truth from Zion.
Throughout history, few cities have held the significance and sanctity that Jerusalem possesses. For over 3 millennia, it has stood as the heart and soul of the Jewish people, a testament to their unbreakable bond with this sacred land. According to the Bible, it was King David who established Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish people. It was a testament to his vision and devotion to a united Israel. Since then, Jerusalem has served as the focal point of Jewish faith and, in many ways, Jewish identity. Around the year 589 before the Common Era, the Babylonian Empire surrounded Jerusalem. They captured the city and destroyed the first Holy Temple. Many Jews were exiled to Babylon, which is now called Iraq. But even during the exile, the Jewish people maintained their spiritual connection to the city. The Jews may have been driven from their beloved city, but Jerusalem always remained in their hearts and minds. The exile ended 70 years later, and the Jews were allowed to return to Jerusalem to build the Second Temple. However, it too was destroyed, this time by the Romans in the year 70 of the Common Era. After that, Jews began praying facing toward Jerusalem, and they still do so today. Jews have longed to return to the city for thousands of years, and that nostalgic sentiment became a symbol of Jewish life in the diaspora. Rebuilding the city, erecting a holy temple, and returning the exiles to Jerusalem is a pattern that is woven into daily Jewish prayer, poetry, art, and even sacred ceremonies. When a Jewish man and woman get married, there's an important part of the ceremony, a poignant reminder of Jerusalem, which is spoken aloud. "If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill." These words reflect the deep-seated belief that Jerusalem is an inseparable part of the Jewish soul. When a Jewish man breaks a glass with his foot while under the wedding canopy, It's a reminder of the destruction of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. By the 1880s, Jews began to escape pogroms throughout Europe and the Middle East. They started journeying to their biblical homeland, seeking a safe place to live and vowing to reclaim their rightful capital. By the end of World War II, thousands of Jewish Holocaust survivors began making their way to the Holy Land. In 1948, the State of Israel was established, and by 1950, Israel's parliament declared Jerusalem as the capital. Israel has been a sovereign nation for 3/4 of a century. Every country gets the right to choose its capital. Nevertheless, many nations around the world chose the city of Tel Aviv as the site to open their embassies in order to appease anti-Israel sentiment in the Arab world.
Under international law, Israel has full legal right to Jerusalem. Jerusalem has always been Israel's capital, but in the 1948 War of Independence, Jordan invaded and divided the city in half, occupying the eastern part. Now, as we all know, invading a country, taking over its territory, cannot change borders. So when Israel took Jerusalem back, reconquered the old city in 1967, it became fully Israeli, and Israel has complete legal right to it. Countries that don't recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital show that they're not just objecting to Israel's presence in Judea and Samaria, they're objecting to Israel in any borders whatsoever.
With such a rich and clear history, the undeniable truth remains: Jerusalem is the undivided capital of Israel. The United States supported Israel's capital claim with the 1995 Jerusalem Embassy Act, which was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in Congress. It called for the relocation of the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But for more than 2 decades, concerns over security prevented it from becoming a reality. This all changed under the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump. He took a historic step by officially recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. On May 14, 2018, the United States once and for all transferred the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Other nations followed Washington's example. Guatemala was the first on May 16, 2018. Then the Muslim-majority country of Kosovo moved their embassy in March of 2021, followed by Honduras in June of 2021. Most recently, Papua New Guinea transferred their embassy in September of 2023. 7 additional countries have vowed to move their embassies as well. Jerusalem is now and will forever be a beacon of hope and unity for the Jewish people. Up next, the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
I'm standing in front of a sign for the Shikmim neighborhood here in Kibbutz Be'eri. We've seen that the building has already begun, and it's very exciting. I had the privilege of being a part of the groundbreaking ceremony for this neighborhood, and 2 adjacent neighborhoods are going to be built next to it that will be to house those who lost their homes on October 7th.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has been a voice of Christian support for Israel and connected the global church to the land of the Bible. Headquartered in Jerusalem, the ICEJ has taken action to stand with Israel by caring for Holocaust survivors, helping Jewish families return home to Israel, providing bomb shelters, fighting anti-Semitism around the world, and by inviting Christians to discover Israel for themselves.
Very early in the morning, the terrorists made a huge hole, a 40-meter hole in the fence with a big tractor, okay? And as you can see, my house and my neighbor house is the same house. It's the closest one to the hole in the gate, in the fence. So I show you later, all the people, most of the people around here didn't survive. And we had a miracle in that morning. We survived. Right now I'm living in a small hotel in Tel Aviv. Coming every day here to Be'eri to work and to show the people around. And we have no belonging at all. We have only this, some clothes. We don't have anything with us. And we are moving to Hatzerim, to the neighborhood that built for us in Hatzerim in the end of October. And waiting for building the houses, new houses, back, and we will be back in Be'eri. We are coming home, and we renovate the kibbutz, and we'll be okay.
I'm here with our good friend Ido Schwartz, and we're standing in the center of the kibbutz in a place that's been cleared. We're discussing today, Ido, about the rebuilding process of Kibbutz Be'eri and the communities in the south. Tell us a little bit how it's going.
So we are now in the heart of Kibbutz Be'eri, where the educational campus was standing. Behind us is one of the kindergartens. All this place was leveled because of the heavy fighting that was here and the situation of the different buildings. Here we're going to build the educational centers, the after-school activity take place, and the educational offices where the teacher lounge and things like this. Regarding the building, Kibbutz Be'eri has already started the first rebuilding phase of 52 house units, and I hope that by the end of 2024, the entire community will be at Kibbutz Hatzerim. We need your support, both firstly by prayers, that those efforts will be fruitful, and secondly, come and visit us and bear witness to this miracle of rebuilding this shattered community. We don't only ask for your partnership, we need your partnership.
We're excited at the International Christian Embassy to be a part of this process of renewal and rebuilding, not just in Kibbutz Be'eri, but also in other communities around the south of Israel. And we want to say to our friends around the world, join with us to be a part of building a brighter future for the people of Israel.
After Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, the ICEJ has been actively standing with Israel and her people through advocacy and urgently needed aid projects. Now is the time for Christians to turn their love for Israel and the Jewish people into real action as never before. Your donation will help deliver bomb shelters to at-risk areas, provide necessary supplies for first responders, support affected citizens with trauma care, and will eventually help rebuild these devastated communities. Visit ICEJUSA.tv to donate online or call 1-800-910-6355 and give your generous gift today.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Erin Viner.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.